Yo, what's going on, guys? Today we're going to take a first look at the Week 7 NFL slate on Draftkings. We got 11 games this week. We're going to go through each position, and I'll just hit on a couple guys that stand out to me at each position. As we go, we will build out a first look lineup, sort of a first look cash lineup. Just give out some guys that stand out early on in the week. I am recording this video on Monday. These are not my final picks for the week. I will upload my final picks video, most likely on either Thursday or Friday. Would definitely appreciate it if you would check that out. I do want to let you guys know that I have a recap video up for Week 6 that you can check out, where I recap the Week 6 slate, talk about my lineups, look at the lineups that I played, talk about my picks as well, the picks that I gave out, how they did, whether they were good or bad. If you want to check that recap video out, I would definitely appreciate it. Also, if you're planning to play the Monday Night Football showdown slate tonight between the Lions and Packers, I do have a video out for the Monday Night Football slate, going over some of my plays for that showdown slate as well. So I got 2 videos up already on the channel that I uploaded late Sunday night that I would appreciate it if you would check out. Definitely give me some feedback on those. Would appreciate it if you guys would leave a like on this video. Give me some feedback on this video as well. If you have any standout plays that you see early on in the week that you want to leave down in the comments, feel free to do so. If you are new to the channel, make sure you click that subscribe button. Also, be sure to click the notification bell so that way you get notified every time I upload and you'll never miss out on a new video. But let's go ahead and take a look at quarterback and just look at, for cash games, who we might be considering as a quarterback play this week. Just looking at 6K and above, before I started recording, there were a couple guys that stood out to me that I think are viable for cash games this week. I think Deshaun Watson, even in a matchup against the Colts, on the road against the Colts, I think that game has a lot of appeal on both sides. There's going to be some Colts players we talk about later in the video that I think are viable this week. Deshaun Watson at 7K. Rarely do I pay up for a quarterback in cash. I did pay up for a quarterback in cash last week. I did play Deshaun Watson in cash against the Chiefs, which worked out with his 31 Draftkings points. Rarely do I pay up at quarterback, but if there's enough value, like we got Malcolm Brown as a value play last week, that made it easy to get in Deshaun Watson, then I think you can definitely look to Watson as a potential spend-up option. He's one of the more consistent quarterbacks in the league. In games that shoot out, Watson's going to throw the ball 35, 40 times. There's a chance this game could shoot out. I'm not sure what the total is right now, but I imagine it's probably going to be pretty high, upwards of like 45, 47, 48, somewhere in that range. So if you want to go to Deshaun Watson, I think he could be viable. Kyler Murray's been playing very well lately, been really good for fantasy. He's running a lot more as of late. Last 2 games, he's got double-digit rushing attempts. In Week 5 against the Bengals, he nearly got 100 rushing yards, almost got you the 100-yard bonus. He's just been really good for fantasy. Now he gets a matchup against a bad Giants defense. I think Kyler Murray is viable for cash at 6,700 if you can fit him in. And then there's a couple more guys in the 6K range I want to talk about. Josh Allen at home against the Dolphins, I think, is a very good option here at 6,500. Josh Allen, one of the more high upside quarterbacks in the league as well, has a lot of rushing upside. It's a great matchup against a very bad Dolphins team. He did get priced up a lot, though, to 6,500. I'd probably be more likely to use him in tournaments, given the pricing, the fact that he's 6,500. Even though it's a great matchup, you have Matt Ryan for a little bit cheaper, who's been one of the most consistent quarterbacks in the league for fantasy this year. You have him at 6,300. You have even Daniel Jones against a bad Cardinals defense, a Cardinals defense that's just surrendering a lot of points this year. The Cardinals team that wants to play fast. I imagine the Giants are going to have one of the higher implied team totals on the slate. So Daniel Jones for a little bit cheaper could be a guy you look to. I feel like Josh Allen probably going to be more of a tournament play this week rather than cash games. I think for cash, the guy that stands out to me early on in the week is Matt Ryan. Matt Ryan's only 6,300 at home against the Rams. Matt Ryan continues to be one of the most consistent options in fantasy this year. His worst game this year was Week 4 against the Titans, where he got nearly 20 Draftkings points. He's pretty much given you a floor of 20 Draftkings points this year. 23, 25, 26, 19, 35, 33. He's throwing for over 300 yards in every game this year, so you're pretty much getting a 16-point floor because he's getting or a 15, 16-point floor because he's getting the 12 points for the 300 yards, and then he's getting the bonus as well. If he throws for multiple touchdowns, you're probably going to get a big ceiling game out of Matt Ryan because he's clearly passing a lot. This Falcons defense has been really bad this year. The Falcons offense has had to put up a lot of points. Like we're seeing the Falcons defense allowing 28, 20, 27, 24 points, allowed 53 points to Houston, 34 points last week against the Cardinals. I imagine this Rams-Falcons game is going to be like the premier game to target this week for stacking. Probably going to be a lot of viable plays on both sides. And I feel like Matt Ryan just continues to be underpriced at 6,300. He should be priced up there with like Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson. So the fact that he's 6,300 at home against the Rams in a likely shootout, I think Matt Ryan is one of the clear standout cash plays this week, and a guy that I'm definitely going to be targeting later on in the week. But a couple more viable options you could look to at quarterback. Daniel Jones, like I said, at home against the Cardinals, I think is viable for 6,100. There's only a couple value plays that stood out to me. I don't feel like this is a week where I'm going to be going super cheap at quarterback in cash games. I think I'm actually going to be trying to get Matt Ryan in if I can. We'll see later on in the week if maybe some value opens up. But Jacoby Brissett at home against the Texans for 5,600, I think is viable for cash games. And Gardner Minshew, even though he was terrible last week and I was pretty high on him against the Saints, he's in a really good matchup again this week against the Bengals, and he's only 5,400. So he's another guy you could look to for potential value play. But I feel like Matt Ryan's one of the safest options in the league right now, and he still remains underpriced. So we're going to roll with him at quarterback. If we need to go down to like Brissett or Minshew, we can, but have a feeling we're going to stick with Ryan. So looking at running back, you've got your normal guys at the top: Barkley, Cook, Johnson, Kamara, Fournette, Aaron Jones, just your normal guys at the top of the running back player pool. Barkley is the most expensive at 8,900. He is questionable. As I'm recording this on Monday, we're not sure if Barkley's going to play or not. If he does play, I don't feel like I'm going to be going to him at 8,900 because I think Dalvin Cook's probably the number 2 running back in fantasy so far this year behind Christian McCaffrey. His role is one of the more secure roles in the league, playing a ton of snaps, getting a ton of carries, getting work in the passing game as well. He's a guy that I usually always try to pay up for in cash games. I didn't go to him last week because the matchup was so tough against the Eagles. This matchup is much better against the Lions. Lions have been pretty bad against the run this year. Another team that allows receptions to running backs as well. So Dalvin Cook at 8K, if we can get him in cash games, I think he's one of the highest floor options on the slate. Probably has one of the highest ceilings as well. You just look at the game log. He's getting so much work, getting a ton of carries, pretty much 15 to 20 carries every game. He's getting the work in the passing game as well. 8 targets week 4, 6 targets against the Giants. Even if the Vikings are playing from behind, they'll use Cook in the passing game. They'll throw him screen passes. And obviously, if the Vikings are playing from ahead and they have a lead, they're just going to run the ball as much as they can. So I think Dalvin Cook at 8K as a high floor option for cash obviously makes a ton of sense. I feel like we'll be able to find some cheap guys at receiver and tight end that will make it easy to get in to expensive running backs. So just looking at the other expensive running backs that we have, you got David Johnson against the Giants, who I think is for sure in play, 7,800 for cash. Kamara against the Bears on the road, probably won't be going there in cash. Aaron Jones against Oakland, I like that matchup, but with Jamal Williams coming back, I don't think I want to pay 7,100 for Aaron Jones. I think the guy that stands out again this week is Leonard Fournette. Just continues to be underpriced for the role that he has. This guy's getting 20, 25 carries a game. He's getting work in the passing game as well. Last week against the Saints, when the Jaguars only scored 6 points, Leonard Fournette still managed to put up nearly 18 Draftkings points, getting 20 carries for 72 yards, 6 catches for 46 yards. His role is one of the more secure roles in the league, along with like Dalvin Cook and Christian McCaffrey. Leonard Fournette's one of those guys that's like barely coming off the field. He's the goal line back. He's the pass down back. He's going to be on the field as much as possible. And now he gets a matchup against a very bad Bengals team, a Bengals run defense that is towards the bottom of the league. Leonard Fournette in a great spot again, and still underpriced in my opinion, given his role. So probably want to get to him in cash this week if possible. We'll plug him in with Dalvin Cook. Obviously, we're going to need to find some value at receiver. So let's move on to receiver. I'm sure when we get to the flex spot, we'll probably be coming back to running back because I do like to usually play 3 running backs and if possible. So we'll come back to running back most likely. But let's move on to receiver now. Since we paid up for 2 running backs, we're probably not going to be able to pay up for receiver. And rarely do I pay up for receiver in cash games anyways. I did pay up for DeAndre Hopkins last week in cash because I thought that was the right move. Just looking at this slate the week before, or on Monday, like a week before it starts, I don't feel like I'm going to be paying up for receiver in cash this week unless it's either maybe DeAndre Hopkins again or Cooper Kupp. But again, I think I just prefer the running backs. I think Fournette, Cook are the guys that stand out as pay-up options. So we're probably going to need to find some cheap options at receiver, definitely like 6K and below. One guy that stood out to me early on in the week was T.Y. Hilton. I think T.Y. Hilton is in a great spot this week at home against the Texans. For only 5,900, T.Y. Hilton's been very good this year, been very consistent. Even with Jacoby Brissett at quarterback, he's still seeing a ton of targets, 9 targets, 6 targets, 10 targets. Last week against Kansas City was one of his worst games, only getting 4 targets, 4 catches for 37 yards. But that was a game where Marlon Mack kind of produced offensively and did a lot of the heavy lifting for the Colts. Normally you're getting 6 to 8 targets for T.Y. Hilton. He's always been a much better receiver at home in the Dome. Now he gets to face a very bad Texans secondary, a slow Texans secondary. I always like to target fast, speedy receivers against the Texans. I thought Tyreek Hill was in a great spot last week, even though I didn't play him because I was worried that he would be limited. I thought the matchup was great for Tyreek Hill, and he came through with a big game, like 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. I do expect a big game from T.Y. Hilton at 5,900. He feels really underpriced this week, probably going to be in consideration for cash. If not that, he'll definitely be in my tournament player pool. And I'll for sure have some stacks with Brissett Hilton because of how cheap both guys are. So I like going to T.Y. Hilton early on in the week as a potential cash play in that mid-range. We're still going to need to find some value. I think let's go ahead and plug in a defense, a cheap defense, so that way we know how much salary we have left. So just looking for a cheap home defense. There's a couple that stand out. You can go to the Packers against the Raiders. The Bears at home against the Saints I think are definitely viable at 3K. Maybe the Seahawks against the Ravens. You got the Falcons against the Rams. Probably don't want to target defenses in that game because I think that game has a lot of potential to be high scoring. But if you wanted to go the Falcons as a cheap defense, I could see that. But let's go ahead and plug in the Bears. I think the Bears are probably the standout defense this week. At home against Teddy Bridgewater, backup quarterback. The Saints as a team have been always much better at home than on the road. The Bears have a very strong defense at home in Chicago. I do expect the Bears defense to play well here. So at 3K, I think the Bears are firmly in play as a cash game defense early on in the week. But once we plug in the Bears defense at 3K, that leaves us about 5K remaining per player. We can always downgrade at defense if we need to, but we got about 5K remaining per player for 2 receivers, a tight end, and a flex. So we're definitely going to need some value at receiver. Probably going to have to look below 5K for a couple options. I think there were a couple guys that stood out. If you want to go to the Rams side of this Falcons-Rams game, which I think obviously is going to be a way I probably look to, you got Robert Woods for only 5,900 against a very bad Falcons secondary, a very bad Falcons defense. You got Brandon Cooks for only 5,400. I think both of those guys are viable cash plays this week. I think Calvin Ridley against the Rams makes a lot of sense at 5,300. John Brown against the Dolphins, 5,500 you could look to. If Devontae Adams remains out, then MVS for 5,200, Geronimo Allison for 4,900 against the Raiders, I think are both viable options for cheap receivers. Mohamed Sanu definitely viable at 4,600. There's a $600 difference between him and Ridley, or a $700 difference. I think I'd rather get to Ridley if possible. Ridley's just been the more consistent receiver. I feel like Ridley just gives you way more upside. Sanu, though, is definitely in play for 4,600, especially if you're looking to play someone with Matt Ryan. I don't think you really have to stack a receiver with your quarterback in cash games. Rarely do I do that. But if you wanted to, I think you could look to either Sanu or Ridley. I think Sanu, though, is firmly in play at only 4,600. He continues to see pretty consistent targets every week, about 6 to 8 targets per game that he's seeing. He did get into the end zone in Week 5 against Houston, had a nice game, 15 Draftkings points, got 18 DK points against Tennessee, 13 against the Colts. I think he could be in play as a cheap receiver this week. There's not a lot of cheap receivers that stand out. Just looking at the slate on Monday, there's no value plays that I feel like are smash plays. Maybe we could look to Slayton if Sterling Shepard remains out. He saw 8 targets last week with Shepard out. Much better matchup here against the Cardinals, although Patrick Peterson, I believe, is expected to return for this game. I think for now we'll either go with Sanu or Ridley. I prefer to go to Ridley because I feel like he's a bit safer, so we'll plug him in at 5,300. That leaves us 4,833 for a wide receiver, tight end, and a flex. Let's just look at tight end real quick and see if we can find a cheap tight end. There was already one guy that really stood out early on in the week, Hunter Henry for only 4K. I think he's probably going to be the highest owned tight end this week. He had a monster game Sunday night against the Steelers. 8 catches, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns, 33 Draftkings points. Because the Chargers played on Sunday night, a lot of their players' pricing was not affected by the game. So Hunter Henry for only 4K. Obviously, his price was not affected. If the Chargers would have played on Sunday afternoon or at 1 o'clock, then Hunter Henry would probably be like 5K, 5,500 this week. The fact that he's still only 4K, seems like he's fully healthy now, seeing a lot of targets. He's obviously going to be a big threat in the red zone. I think Hunter Henry is a very good cash play this week for only 4K. You could obviously pay up at tight end for like Evan Ingram, who's in a great matchup. Mark Andrews continues to see consistent targets. Darren Waller continues to see consistent targets. But I feel a bit safer with Henry, and the fact that he's so much cheaper, allows you to fit in what you want. So we got $52.50 remaining per player for a wide receiver and a flex. I talked about running back, going back to running back, because I always like to play 3 running backs if possible this week. Just looking for maybe some potential mid-tier running backs like 6K, 5K range. There was a couple guys that stood out. I think Tevin Coleman for $5,600 against the Redskins is firmly in play. His workload seems to be very secure. He pretty clearly is the number 1 running back for the 49ers. He got 18 carries last week against the Rams. Got two catches as well, so 20 touches. Got 45 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, 14 Draftkings points. He's firmly in play for cash this week, I feel like, at $5,600. If Devin Singletary comes back, you could look to him at $5,400 against the Dolphins. That's a really good matchup. We obviously don't know if he's going to play this week because I'm recording this on Monday, but he's someone you could look to. Devontae Freeman's been much better lately, getting a lot more consistent volume, consistent work. Last week against the Cardinals, 19 carries, 88 yards, 3 catches as well. He's a guy that's always going to see good looks in the passing game. This is a Falcons team that we know wants to pass the ball a lot. And even though the Falcons are passing the ball a lot, that's pretty good for Freeman because he gets a lot of looks in the passing game. I think for $5,400, he's firmly in play for cash games this week. Even though we already have Ryan and Ridley, I think we can still go with Freeman, especially because this game should be so high scoring. And I imagine the Falcons are going to have one of the highest implied team totals on the slate. So I think Freeman's a good play at $5,400. For cheaper, there's a couple guys you could maybe consider, like Josh Jacobs against Green Bay, I think, is a guy you could look to. But I feel like Freeman's probably a good way to go at $5,400 for now. So that leaves us $5,100 remaining for receiver. We got Tyrell Williams against Green Bay. Probably don't want to go there. Christian Kirk against the Giants. If he's able to play this week, I think he could firmly be in play against the Giants. He continues to see massive target volume every week. 12 targets in weeks 1 and 3. Against Seattle, got 5 targets, 8 targets against Baltimore. He did not play on Sunday against the Falcons. I believe he hasn't played the last 2 weeks. If he's able to go this week and he's going to be fully healthy, for $5K, Christian Kirk's probably one of the strongest cash options, probably one of the safest options as well. I think he's a guy we could definitely plug in for now at $5K. If we need to go cheaper, you have like Geronimo Allison, who I think is pretty strong against the Raiders if Devontae Adams is out. You got Mohamed Sanu, who you could go to. If you want to go down to Sanu, then you could upgrade from Ridley to someone like maybe Robert Woods or Golden Tate, who's a pretty strong option if Sterling Shepard remains out. Let's see if you could do that. Let's see if you went down to Sanu, what that would allow you to do. So if you went down to Sanu off of Ridley, that'd leave you $5,800, so then you could play like Golden Tate, who, like I said, should be the number 1 receiver for the Giants against the Cardinals. With no Sterling Shepard, he saw 9 targets last week, 6 catches, 102 yards, and a touchdown. Tate does play out of the slot, so he'll be able to avoid Patrick Peterson. He's firmly in play at $5,800 if Sterling Shepard remains out, but I think I prefer the other way, going Ridley and Christian Kirk. I feel like Christian Kirk, if he plays this week, is going to be a very strong option at only $5K. His price tag hasn't moved since he's been inactive the last few weeks. He should not be this cheap still, especially in a matchup against the Giants. So this is my first look lineup for week 7. This will probably not be the lineup that I play this week, obviously, because I'm recording this on Monday, but this is definitely a good start for the week. I have a pretty good feeling about how I'm going to be approaching this slate, assuming no crazy news breaks. I feel like this is going to be a week where I'm probably going to like a lot of Falcons and Rams. That's going to be a game we want to target for cash games. Probably going to be paying up for running back with like Dalvin Cook, Leonard Fournette. Those are the clear like workhorse backs at the top, and both of them are in pretty good matchups. I think T.Y. Hilton, even if I don't get to him in cash, is going to be a guy I have a lot of exposure to in tournaments. Ridley, I think, is pretty strong, stacking with Matt Ryan. I like Christian Kirk a lot. Feel very safe about his volume if he plays this week. Hunter Henry's way underpriced. Devontae Freeman seeing a lot of work lately, and then the Bears D at home against a backup quarterback in Teddy Bridgewater. I like a lot for only $3K. So that's my first look lineup for this week. Just a couple of standout plays I see early on in the week. I will have my full picks video out on either Thursday or Friday, so I would definitely appreciate it if you guys would check that video out. I do recap my picks every week. I recap them every Sunday night in my recap video, which is already up on my channel. So if you want to see how my picks did in Week 6, you can check out that recap video. If you want to see the lineups that I played, you can watch that as well. I do cover my lineups. Also, if you're planning to play the Monday Night Football showdown slate tonight, would definitely appreciate it if you would check that video out. My most recent video is popping up on the screen. Most likely is the recap video, so you can just click on the recap video. It's on the screen right now. You can also click on my logo to subscribe to the channel. I would definitely appreciate that. Feel free to comment down below some of your favorite plays for this Week 7 slate. If there's any standouts, guys, that you see, definitely feel free to comment that down below. But that's pretty much it, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate it. We'll see you in the next video. Peace.